Hello and welcome to the show. So this week's Failrace versus the community was cycle production, i.e. everybody's in the same car, no tuning. And so yeah, basically this is all about driver skill, pure driver skill, nothing really to do with the cars. Admittedly, you know, some people might prefer cars to others, but ignore that fact. Anyway, race 1 was some Lancia Deltas at Sedona Club, and the first corner, which was likely to cause huge incidences, well, one car went wide. If you went around the first corner okay, it was the next bit there was a little bit more of a problem. There was a very, very fast chicane here, and there were a few cars that were all over the place. You can't really show you very well, camera angles are terrible for this bit, but it's literally all it takes is one car to get things a little bit wrong, just to tap the back of somebody else, and that kind of causes a concertina effect throughout the field, and that seems to be the bigger issue. However, everybody got through there without any major damage. I mean, you saw one car got flung, someone goes very wide there, outbrakes himself, someone got flung off a little bit wide, but nobody had any major damage, which is good. A little bit further around, I think this is still on the first lap, there was a lot of close racing going on as people are kind of juggling for position on the first lap. First laps are always chaotic in any race on Forza with 16 odd people trying to race around here. Now, one of the big challenges on this circuit, not only is the first corner, is the corner coming up here that is a high-speed chicane. If you get it wrong, like the car in front almost did, he got away with it. In fact, the car in front of them didn't, the bright pink and multicoloured one. If you get it wrong through there, there is some sticky gravel, which if you touch, you pretty much stop stationary, and then, yeah, that causes some problems. The first corner, though, is a very good overtaking spot. It's one of the few kind of corners at this track. It's one of the, there's only two overtaking spots. The first corner is very good. It's a big braking zone, very wide corner. You can try lots of different lines. The problem is it's followed by this very, very fast chicane, which you can't really get too wide through here unless you're very, very brave. Especially not in these cars. They actually turn out to be more tail happy than you would expect for a four-wheel drive car. I like the Deltas, not just because of the rally car history and everything, but they're a fun car to drive, I think. I had started fairly well. I think I actually started on pole. The grids are all random on this, so I just got lucky starting on pole. You can see how hard I was pushing it there, as I got very near going on the sticky stuff. However, it was quite apparent that I wasn't quite quick enough around here. The white Delta that followed, I think this is sort of like 4 laps in, I was having to defend like mad to try and keep him behind. Now, as I said, luckily this track doesn't have a huge number of overtaking spots. If you can defend the first corner, you're probably going to be alright. This time, ooh, just about got away with it. Luckily he ran wide, well, both of us ran wide, so I didn't lose the position. But yeah, this is a fairly easy track to defend at. As I said, there's really only 2 overtaking spots. Through here, you can see he's got a much better run through here, but you just can't do anything when this corner is near enough flat out. You can take it flat out through there if you're brave, but you might go sideways a little bit. Further back, and there was some good racing. I have to say, this is for 3rd position, I think, with possibly the overtake of the evening for the yellow Delta here, who is on the inside for this corner, but then you're going to be stuck trying to go the long way around. And considering these cars are identical, that is a very good overtake to go all the way around the outside there, because yeah, these cars are completely identical. There's no car advantage, there's no grip advantage or speed advantage to anybody, so to manage to get your car all the way around the outside there is very, very tricky. And unfortunately he goes and throws it away with carrying just a little bit too much speed in the chicane, ends up on the sticky stuff and then drops back, a little bit of lag, ignore that. So now you've got another car joining in the fun, coming up towards the first corner. This is the overtaking spot you really want to line up a pass on. If you can get on down the inside here, it's a fairly straightforward pass. He cuts across to the wrong side of the road. I guess he thought he's far enough ahead not to have to worry about defending. There's going to be another kind of switchback going on, and he can just about get the move done. In the background, there's some more cars appearing. There was a lot of very close racing in this one. It didn't really matter what position you were in either. There was a lot of good racing throughout the entire grid. This is further back. I'm not sure what position this is for. There's so much going on. It was very hard to keep track of. And I apologise to anybody whose races I might have missed who had some good battles, because they're really, I could have go to any point of view at any time, and most of them were having a battle with somebody. It was very, very close racing. This time the rather bright pink Delta, or multicoloured Delta I should say, trying to find a way past the M&M one. A little bit of rubbing there, and no harm done. As you can see in front of them, there was another group of cars. There were an awful lot of groups actually spread out through here. It was an interesting one. We come through the very, very fast chicane, Terrifying corner, this one, and just a little bit too much speed, and that's what happens when you take too much. But you're also going to be very careful when you come back on the track that you don't cause a massive collision behind it. Can't even remember where this is. This is kind of oh no, this is back up to second, third, and fourth. They'd swapped places again. These guys had a really good race. There was a lot of changing positions between them. The interesting thing with this race is that the field had split up all into pairs or threes. It was quite spread out. But everybody had somebody, or most people had somebody to race. I think there were a couple of cars that had damage, but I'm not sure how they got it. Yeah, as you can see, there's an awful lot of good racing as we come through towards, this is kind of getting towards the end of the lap now, and our SO Delta is trying to find a way past, but it is tricky to overtake around here, especially if the guy in front knows what they're doing and can kind of defend the line. Come out of here, you're having a look, but you can't really do much. The first chicane, the fast chicane, is very, very tricky to overtake through, but this one here, because of the way that there's sort of no runoff at all, you've got to be very, very careful. Trying to get two cars wide through there is not advisable. The guy in front, yeah, it's very lucky to get away with that one. That was a little bit close to getting stuck on the sticky stuff. At the front, and I had managed to go 5 laps. This is coming on to lap 6 now of holding this car behind me. It was very, very tricky, and I had to try everything I could. Eventually, though, I kind of ended up running a little bit too wide on the exit, and now he's kind of up along the inside. We're going to try and go too wide through the fast chicane. Not a good idea. We're both sliding through the first part. Can't quite get it turned for the second part, and there's a little bit of contact, a little bit of rubbing. We both managed to get away though without any damage, and in the end the white Delta comes out in front. I now know that I have to get back in front of him here at the only other real overtaking spot, because I know I don't have the speed. However, he does a rather nice cutback and I can't do anything about it. So I am now back in second, and I know I have very little chance of keeping up with him because I just wasn't quick enough around this track. I think a lot of people actually haven't really driven this track. It's not my favourite of tracks. I thought we'd use it because we haven't used this track for ever. I don't know if we have ever used it, but yeah, I don't think this is many people's favourite tracks. I can't remember what position this is for. I think this is for around 5th and 6th or something like that. Maybe even, yeah, I think this is for 5th and 6th. Again, this is another pairing of two very evenly matched drivers. Yeah, it's an interesting one. This does really rely purely on driver skill. So the field did end up being quite spread out. There wasn't too many incidences in this one. There are a few. I didn't see many of them. A few cars ended up broken, but quite a lot of cars were still going. There's an awful lot of good racing as well, which is what I was hoping for by doing this sort of cycle production. What positions are we looking at now? I think this is for 3rd again. I can't tell. I can't remember. No, this is further back. This is right towards the back of the grid, back of the field, with two identically liveried or very similarly liveried Repsol cars. Yeah, this kind of goes to show there was kind of a lot of racing going on. It didn't matter where you were, because there was probably somebody around the same sort of driver skill level as you that you could race with, and there was a lot of good racing. I've said that quite a few times already. But yeah, there was. And it just goes to show, I honestly think that racing in lower PI cars, not these silly, massively powerful monsters that everybody seems to like, it's more fun racing cars like these. It's easier for everybody as well. I believe this is on the final lap now, and there was nothing I could do to keep up with the white Delta. You can see me in the background. I was pushing pretty hard. In fact, on my final lap, I just about got the hang of the track. But yeah, there was nothing I could do, so the white Delta is going to take the win, and I'm going to come in 2nd, which is fairly respectable. I'm pretty pleased with that one. Further back, and the battle for 3rd had pretty much gone on the entire race. These two are still squabbling over this position. Yeah, it was a good race between these two. I have to say I enjoyed watching the replays of this entire evening. There's a lot of very close driving going on, and a lot of clean racing as well, which is always good to see. Me and the leader had put out a pretty big margin over everybody else, and everybody was very spread out around the track. Come through the chicane for the final time. Guy in 4th, there we go, I will remember the positions. It isn't quite close enough to have a look, and that is the order they are going to finish in. I'm not quite sure what happened to the yellow Delta. I think it may have had a lag crash. I didn't see it. This could be the same yellow Delta, or it could not be. I have no idea. But this is around the mid-pack. This is sort of around 9th and 10th, I think, possibly. I'm just guessing. I can't remember. There was lots of positional changes going on. This is probably the closest finish of the entire grid. So as we come through the fast chicane, the yellow car has been considerably faster. We've been trying to find a way past this red car for quite some time. However, as they come out sort of onto the straight, start-finish straight, there's no real place to overtake through that chicane, so you've got to try and get a really good run and see if you can out-drag them to the line, but he couldn't quite do it, so that was the order. They were going to finish. The AI then continued the race. There's a little bit of bumping because the AI aren't particularly fantastic drivers. There's a pink car facing the wrong way in the background, and there we go. The AI did the overtaking for you. Race number 2 was the Shelby GT500 Mustangs at Sunset Peninsula Raceway. This was likely to cause some carnage. These are big, heavy muscle cars, very powerful, around I wouldn't say a particularly twisty track, but there is quite a lot of turns to it. It's quite a long track. First corner, and there was inevitably a crash. Well, in fact, technically second corner, there was inevitably a crash. And again, it was just one car slightly outbraked himself, and it was a small tap that caused chaos for absolutely everybody. There's me in the background. I started last, or near enough last in this grid, and so I was having to try and make my way through the chaos. It was pretty much a case just of avoid everybody crashing and try and sort of run your own race, and don't worry about everybody else was doing too much if you could keep out of the way. Amazingly, everybody managed to avoid each other into, I don't even know what corner number that is, but into that bit, there was loads of cars right next to each other, and somehow we all avoided crashing into each other. There were a few damaged cars in this one from the second corner, sorry, incident. This was a particularly strange, laggy, weird incident. Yeah. I don't know, how does that work, game? Why have you done that? Yeah, I have no clue. Why random front flip? I don't know. I can't explain that one. There's not like there's even a car anywhere near that could have caused him to do that. So yeah, there is now one car that is stuck on his side. Lag was to claim another victim. That's second and third having a big crash for no apparent reason. And there's me just about managing to make my way through, and somebody else got through as well, I think. Yeah, that was an incredibly scary moment. There's now a car with a fairly smoking engine. This is the view from onboard my car that I got to see of this. It was a pretty terrifying crash because you can't see anything that's going on, and then the car suddenly changed direction, and I've got to try and find my way through. Yeah, that was a pretty nasty crash, that one. Again, that was another lag-related one. The car that was in second lagged backwards and smacked the front of the guy in third and took the pair of them out. I then quickly caught up to the leader, and as we came into the place with the magically rolling Mustang, the guy who was leading, I'm not sure if he locked up or if that's lag on the replay. It shows him locking up. Whether that was actually what happened or whether that's just a laggy replay, I don't know. He clattered into the side of the car that was on its sort of side, and the car is now righted but very heavily damaged. I don't know what he hit. The game just decided it was going to have him on his roof. So well done, Forza. There was a sort of large group in this one. This race sort of spread out very early on. I kind of vanished at the front, and everybody's trying to avoid the stricken car. And there was a large number of cars, shall we say, further back that had sustained damage in that first lap. Sort of insanity. This was the biggest group of cars, but as you can see, there are a number of broken Mustangs in this one. Again, replays are a little bit laggy, so it's very hard to tell sort of how much engine damage people have because the damage goes away after. If you like skip around in the replay, damage can kind of go away. It's really weird. Later on, and this was the best battle of the entire race, pretty much. These were three fairly undamaged cars, from what I can tell. That's we're all arguing over third to fifth place at the moment. These have just about got away with all of the first lap madness, and were making their way kind of up through the field from that. Yeah, this was a good race between these lot. As I said, the rest of the field had various troubles. Again, there seems to be some weird thing with cars locking up. I wouldn't think you could actually keep these cars under control and drive this well if they were actually locking up. I believe it is just a dodgy replay, which is a bit of a shame on this race. Because I was expecting, actually loads of people wanted to take part in this one in particular, but the server was being a right pain. We ended up only with 14 people in this one instead of 16 because people just couldn't get connected. So I do apologise if anybody was wanting to take part in certain events, because I can't organise getting people in certain events because not everybody can get connected, not everybody's online at the right time. It was a nightmare. But yes, as we come down towards the end of this lap, this track has quite a few good overtaking spots, which is always useful. This here is one of them. It's come towards the final corner. However, the NOS Mustang tries to take a little bit too much of the grass and ends up on the sticky stuff, dropping back towards the sort of bottom part of that group. A few laps later though, and he caught right back up to them, and it's into the same corner again. Yeah, I quite enjoy this track for racing. I mean, I've done lots of Will It Roll on here, but as a race track, I think this is quite a good track. There's plenty of overtaking opportunities around here. The track's fairly wide as well, which is always good. The first corner though is really very nasty. There's a little bit of a touch there. The first corner here is really nasty, especially in cars like these. I mean, the Shelby Mustangs aren't terrible cars to drive. I mean, they are a little bit heavy. They are fairly powerful, so they are quite scary. The first corner here, though, is a very tricky one to get right. You will not take it flat out in these cars. There is a pretty big break. It is possible to overtake, as you will have seen, but it's a very scary place to try and get past somebody, especially in cars like, yeah, very especially in cars like these. If you're driving something like Radicals, you'd be fine. Back towards the front, and this is sort of further on in the race, the black and red car is the one that had collected the guy that had rolled it. He had suffered, amazingly he hadn't suffered any engine damage somehow, despite going head on into it. He had suffered pretty much everything else damage, including steering, which makes it very tricky to drive. For those of you who don't know, possibly, if any of you don't play Forza, when you damage your car, when you damage your steering, what it does is the steering will pull either to the left or the right. I don't know how it decides which way it goes, but the steering will pull, as you can see. It makes it a little bit tricky to drive. It makes it very tricky to drive, and especially tricky to drive fast. There's a little bit of a lock up into the first corner. Luckily, there is a fairly large runoff area there, which is useful for when everything goes wrong. However, everything went wrong at a completely different corner for this guy. Again, I think that was just the steering caught him out halfway through the corner. And again, you can see how the car is pulling to the whichever direction. Let me just think. Left, right. That's the one. And yeah, it's pretty tricky to drive when you've got a broken steering. So this is now I think he's now in 4th, this car. This is kind of the battle for around 5th place. In the background, you will notice, while this lot have been squabbling, there is a black and white car that has been making its way through the field. It was doing a pretty good job from having started way back. They're going to go 3 wide into... That's pretty brave. Luckily, it is, again, very wide corner, which is one of the reasons why this track is so good for overtaking and for racing, is there's plenty of room. There's no excuse, really, for running somebody off the road, because the track is very wide at most points. Come out onto the back straight. Amazingly, the red and black Mustang has got a little bit of a better run. A little bit of a squeezing going on. Just as I said, there should be plenty of room. The cars squeeze each other out. In the end, everything goes wrong as they come up towards the kind of final chicaney bit. Again, it's a tiny tap that causes both of them to end up in the grass and in the sticky stuff, and the black and white car can make his way up to 4th. I had a very lonely race in this one. I pretty much got to the front and vanished with a pretty much undamaged car and didn't have anybody to really sort of slow me down, stuck in battles. I had such a huge lead, actually, that I slowed down at the end, so at the end of race timer didn't screw everybody over. So yeah, it was an interesting race, a pretty lonely race for me. There was still some good racing in it though, which is good, and there were quite a few damaged cars. A lot of that one there was down to lag, unfortunately. Our final race is some Ferrari 355 challenges at the Catalunya circuit. I love these cars. These are really very good cars to drive. I had a fantastic start. I think I started 4th, but I managed to make my way up to 1st before the first corner. That is what manual and clutch can do when you're racing people. I don't know how many of you weren't or are or aren't running manual and clutch, but if you want to sort of be putting in the really serious lap times, you've got to run manual and clutch, because there is just that little advantage you can get by doing that. Further back, and yay, the lag struck again. But that wasn't what actually caused the incident here. Again, it was just a tiny tap from somebody, and that is about 5 cars, I think, were involved in that one, all suffering various amounts of damage in the process. It's the problem with having 16 cars all trying to fit into the same bit of track. If there is a tiny bit of contact from anybody, it is going to cause a really big crash, because everybody's there and nobody can get out of the way. However, the cars that had got through were still very close around this track. This is a pretty tricky track to overtake as a Ferrari is going through the floor, because a lot of the corners are very fast. It's designed for Formula 1 cars after all. The corners are very fast, and there's very little sort of braking zones around here, which makes overtaking very tricky. So you've got to try and pick and choose your places carefully. As you come up towards whatever this corner is, it's very fast, and they were trying to go 3 wide, and amazingly everybody fits through. A little bit of lag to assist things. Yeah, how everybody got through there 3 wide and not have a big crash, I don't really know. But well done to all of you lot. This is the best overtaking spot of the lot, down towards the hairpin. Really the only the only really sensible place to overtake. As you can see, lots of people were trying to overtake. The first corner is pretty good for overtaking as well, but there isn't as much braking as you would expect coming off such a long straight. Here's a relatively fast corner. At the front, I was being kept fairly honest by the yellow Ferrari that was behind me. As you can see, we had a rather big lead over the rest of the field. It does help in these races if you start at the front. Undoubtedly, you can not necessarily just because you can get away, but you don't have to. You have to be stuck slowed down battling other cars. So a guy who can get away at the front doesn't necessarily have to be a particularly fast driver if people behind them are stuck in the traffic trying to make their way through. So yeah, it's certainly advantageous for me starting at the front of this race, and you also are less likely to be caught up in all that chaos at the first corner. It does help to actually be at the back though sometimes, because everybody has a crash in front of you and you can get away, you can kind of get through, which will happen with me and the Mustangs. This is the race for third. You can see it is pretty damn close. Amazingly, they try to go too wide through that corner, and then somehow they all have a spin. I'm not really sure what happened there. Replay cameras are terrible here. God, yeah, that was very dumb of you, reversing into the road. Yeah, I'm not sure what happens if it was assisted or not, but it looked like he did a spin on his own accord. Later on, and there was a lot of groups in this one. Unlike the Lanciers, where everybody are kind of paired up. In this one, there was quite a few groups of 3 or more cars were all put together. There was, I think, about four cars that were damaged and were sort of out of it really at the start. This also goes to show actually how important that run onto the straight is. It is really important on this track. It is such a long straight that you get a very good run onto it, because you can see the yellow car pulled out a rather big margin to the car behind him as they came onto the straight. There was a little bit of a collision in front. You can see the green car there got spun around. You see, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to wait and make sure everything is clear before you rejoin the track, because that's how you get really big crashes. This is another lap on, I believe, and there is lots of close racing still occurring, which is useful for video making. Yeah, there was a lot of good racing in this race in particular. Again, in fact, all evening it had been pretty damn good. Unfortunately, lag is an issue with these, and you will see occasionally in this race and the other races. It's a real shame, but I cannot do anything about it, really. The only possible sort of solution I have is to make smaller lobbies, but then that means less people get to participate. I don't know how you people think about that. But yeah, at the moment it was mostly behaving itself, which is good, as we have 5 cars all in fairly close quarters, all trying to find their way past each other. The final segment, sorry, of this lap is a pretty nasty one. Very tight corners. Amazingly, possibly very, very close for overtake of the evening between that move there, as he gets past 2 cars into one corner, or the yellow Delta earlier on. You can overtake through this sort of section of the track at the end, but it is very sort of tight and twisty. There is also the sticky stuff lying about to catch you out if everything goes wrong. This is back towards the front, I believe. Not really sure. I can't remember what's blooming going on here. As the yellow car is trying to find his way past the red one. It's quite tricky to overtake with equal cars if you're going to try to go all the way around the outside there. You know, when the cars have got equal levels of grip, it's very, very tricky to go around the outside, or at equal levels of speed as well. I do enjoy cycle production. I think it is a lot more fun than just sort of, here's a class, go build a car for it. Because it was really a complete and utter test of driver skill. You can't really blame anything else. If somebody outbrakes themselves and runs a little bit wide, you can't say, oh well, it's the car's fault, because everybody's dealing with the same machinery. And that's why I did this particular thing, and that's why I do like cycle production. Coming towards the hairpin, a favourite overtaking spot for everybody. Our purple car is going to try and find his way past. A little bit of squeezing going on. It is actually rather tricky. I don't know what camera angles people use. If you are running on bonnet view, it can be very tricky to actually see where a car is when they're sort of alongside you, because trying to look sideways and drive at the same time isn't easy. And especially trying not to crash as well. If you've got lots of people around you trying to look sideways and then figure out where you're going and trying to give somebody space, it can be quite tricky. Everybody got through that one there though relatively safely as they come out onto the straight. Now there's a big group of them. When there's a big group of cars, it normally means trouble, because somebody's going to try and find a way to overtake, and that can often end in disaster. So as they come up towards the first corner, slipstream was quite important here actually as well. On most circuits you don't notice it, but on a circuit like this with such a long straight, you can see it really is pretty damn effective, as the purple car's going to have a little bit of a look, a little bit of dive up the inside, but I can't quite get it done. The green Ferrari is much better on the brakes there. It's also, this track is quite nasty in that there's very few braking markers, especially for that first corner. There isn't a braking board of any sort, so especially no one had driven these cars really before at this track. So if you don't know the car, you don't know the track, it's very hard getting the braking right for that first corner. Later on, I think, yeah, this is the end of the race. I'd had a fairly quiet race again. The yellow Ferrari, you could just about see him in the background, had kept me fairly honest. I think it was about 400, 500 feet between us. So yeah, there was no room for error in this one for me. There was no waiting at the finish line. But yeah, it was a fairly straightforward win for my Ferrari. These are great cars to drive. If you haven't driven them, I do recommend you give them a go. And further back, these two were still battling right until the very end. There was a little bit of contact as they came in towards the final sort of sector. I think there's a little bit of desperation there, creeping in, trying to find a way past. But yeah, overall, I would say it was a very successful evening. Cycle production is easily my favourite form of racing on Forza. There is an online playlist for it, although it can often be not very many people on it, and it can descend into crashing if you're in the wrong sort of lobby. I do enjoy sort of the challenge of everybody driving the same car. So yes, there we go. That is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. Next week's versus the community is going to be a state car racing or station wagon or whatever the hell other people call them. I don't really know. So basically that is the Volvo 850R versus the Audi RS2 Advant and the Ford Country Squire. The race will be held on Thursday the 8th. It will start at 7 PM British summertime. I think that's what we're in at the moment. If you want to sign up for this event, I will put a link in the description to our forums, and then you find the section Failrace versus the community, and that is where you sign up. If you haven't got an account in our forums, well, you should get one, so you can sign up to race events, and you can generally chat. We go on the forums fairly regularly, and keep an eye on everything going on there. There's also other racing events, and if we are ever doing anything that requires people, we'll be posting up in there, looking for people to participate. So there we go. That is it, guys. Until next time, goodbye.